The person who tries to change others has already lost the battle for love. Raise your hand if you've ever found yourself wondering why someone pulls away just when things seem to be getting serious. Keep it up. Now, how many of you have ever caught yourself analyzing their every text message, trying to decode what they really mean? Most of you. Here's what nobody wants to tell you. The very moment you began chasing their commitment, you guaranteed they would run from it. This isn't about them being broken or emotionally unavailable. This isn't about their past relationships or their fear of intimacy. This is about a fundamental law of human nature that operates as predictably as gravity. When you need someone to complete you, you repel the very thing you seek. When you become complete within yourself, commitment flows toward you like water flowing downhill. I learned this truth the hard way, watching a woman I knew transform her entire love life in 6 months. Sarah had been dating Mark for 2 years. Every few months, he would pull back, saying he needed space to think. She would panic, pursue, convince, and eventually he would return, only to repeat the cycle. She was exhausted. He was suffocating. The relationship was dying a slow, painful death. Then something shifted. Sarah stopped chasing, not because she gave up on love, but because she finally understood that her desperate need for his commitment was the very thing preventing it. She began treating herself with the love and respect she had been begging him to give her. Within 3 months, Mark proposed, not because she manipulated him, but because she had become someone worthy of deep, lasting commitment. What happened? Sarah discovered that relationships are mirrors. Every person who enters your life reflects back to you exactly where you are in your own consciousness. When you operate from a place of lack, of incompleteness, of desperate need, you attract people who mirror that energy back to you. They become unavailable because you are energetically unavailable to yourself. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever noticed how avoidant people are initially drawn to you when you're in that seeking, pursuing energy? There's a reason for this. They feel safe with someone who wants them more than they want you. It confirms their deepest belief that they are worthy of love only when they maintain distance. Your neediness feeds their avoidance. Your pursuit confirms their unconscious belief that they must run to feel safe. This creates what I call the dance of dysfunction. The more you chase, the more they retreat. The more they retreat, the more you chase. Both of you are trapped in patterns that guarantee the very outcome you're both trying to avoid. You're afraid of abandonment, so you cling. They're afraid of engulfment, so neither of you gets what you truly want, authentic, lasting love. But here's what changes everything. When you stop dancing this dance, when you step into your own completeness, you completely alter the energetic dynamic. A plant doesn't chase sunlight. It grows so vibrant, so alive, so magnificently itself, that light naturally flows toward it. When you embody wholeness rather than neediness, you become irresistible to those who are ready for real commitment. This requires what I call a personal responsibility revolution. Instead of asking, how can I make them commit? You must ask, how can I become someone worthy of deep commitment? Instead of focusing on changing their behavior, you focus on transforming your own consciousness. Instead of trying to heal their wounds, you heal your own. This isn't easy to hear, especially when you're in pain. When someone you love keeps pulling away, your instinct is to blame them, to focus on their issues, their patterns, their fears. But this focus keeps you powerless. The only person you can truly change is yourself. The only consciousness you can truly transform is your own. The only love you can guarantee is the love you give to yourself. Most people resist this truth because it means taking responsibility for their experience. It's easier to say they're emotionally unavailable than to ask, what within me is attracting unavailable people? It's more comfortable to focus on their commitment issues than to examine your own patterns of seeking validation outside yourself. But consider this. What if every avoidant person in your life has been a teacher, showing you exactly where you abandon yourself? What if their pulling away is simply mirroring your own disconnection from your true worth? What if their inability to commit fully is reflecting your own inability to commit fully to loving yourself? I once knew a man who attracted the same type of woman repeatedly. Beautiful, intelligent, successful women who would get close. then suddenly become distant and unavailable. He would spend months analyzing their behavior, trying to understand what went wrong. Then he made a radical decision. He stopped looking at them and started looking at himself. He realized that he had never learned to be alone without feeling lonely. He discovered that he had been using relationships to avoid facing his own emptiness. He understood that he was asking these women to fill a void that only he could fill. So he began the sacred work of becoming whole within himself. He started meditating each morning, not to attract love, but to connect with the love that already existed within him. He began pursuing his own dreams with the same passion he had been putting into chasing relations. He developed friendships, hobbies, and a spiritual practice that fulfilled him whether he was in a relationship or not. 6 months later, he met someone completely different, someone who was available, emotionally mature, and ready for real partnership. Why? Because he had become available to himself. Because he no longer needed a relationship to feel complete. Because his energy had shifted from desperate seeking to confident being. This is the sacred work of self-completion. Most people enter relationships as half people seeking their other half. They believe that finding the right person will make them whole. But wholeness cannot be given to you by another. It must be cultivated within yourself. When you stop seeking completion through others and start creating it within yourself, you become magnetic to those who are also whole. Self-completion means learning to love your own company. It means developing interests, passions, and pursuits that fulfill you independent of any relationship. It means treating yourself with the kindness, respect, and appreciation you wish to receive from others. It means becoming your own best friend, your own greatest supporter, your own source of validation. When you truly love yourself, you stop settling for crumbs of affection. When you know your worth, you naturally attract people who recognize and cherish that worth. When you are complete within yourself, you can love others freely without grasping, without desperation, without the need to control or possess. This doesn't mean becoming selfish or isolated. It means becoming so filled with your own love and life force that you have an abundance to share. It means loving from fullness rather than emptiness, from choice rather than need, from strength rather than weakness. The question you must ask yourself is this: if you never found the committed relationship you're seeking, would your life still be beautiful? Would you still be fulfilled? Would you still feel worthy and complete? If the answer is no, then you have work to do before you can attract the love you desire. True commitment is not about finding someone to complete you. It's about two complete people choosing to share their completeness with each other. It's about loving someone, not because you need them, but because you choose them. It's about partnership between equals, not dependency between half people. When you embody this truth, when you become genuinely complete within yourself, something magical happens. You stop attracting avoidant people because you're no longer operating from the energy that creates avoidance. You stop chasing commitment because you no longer need it to feel whole. You start attracting people who are ready for real partnership because you're ready for real partnership. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a daily practice, a gradual awakening, a slow but steady return to your own magnificence. It requires patience with yourself, compassion for your journey, and the willingness to choose growth over comfort, truth over familiar patterns, love over fear. The path forward isn't about learning new techniques to get someone to commit. It's about cultivating the kind of person that naturally attracts commitment. It's about becoming so rooted in your own worth that you no longer need anyone else's validation to feel valued. It's about developing such a beautiful relationship with yourself that others are naturally drawn to the love and light that radiates from your being. This is where real transformation begins. Not with changing them, but with changing you. Not with getting love, but with becoming love. Not with finding your worth in their commitment, but with establishing your worth through your own commitment to yourself. Now that you understand what must change, you need to know exactly how to change it. A farmer knows something that most people in relationships have forgot. He doesn't stand in his field yelling at the seeds to grow faster. He doesn't get angry at the soil for not producing instant results. He doesn't abandon his crops when they don't sprout overnight. He simply creates the right conditions and trusts the natural. How many of you have tried to force someone to commit and watched them pull away even more? Keep those hands up. Now, how many of you have planted a garden and tried to force the plants to grow by pulling on them? Nobody. You understand that forcing destroys growth. Yet in relationships, you abandon this wisdom and wonder why everything wilts under pressure. Creating the conditions for commitment is like creating the conditions for a garden to flourish. You prepare the soil of your own consciousness. You plant seeds of self-respect and water them with daily practice. You protect these tender shoots from the harsh winds of doubt and criticism. You trust that with consistent care, something beautiful will grow. But here's what most people get wrong. They try to create these conditions in the other person. They try to heal their partner's childhood wounds. They try to prove their worth through grand gestures. They try to convince and pursue and demonstrate their value. This is like trying to plant seeds in someone else's garden, while ignoring your own. Your only garden is your own consciousness. Your only soil is your own heart. Your only harvest is the love you cultivate within yourself. When you tend this garden with devotion, others cannot help but notice the beauty that grows there. They're naturally drawn to the fragrance of someone who has learned to love themselves well. This cultivation happens through small daily practices that seem insignificant but create massive transformation over time. Think about a river carving through rock. Each drop of water appears powerless, yet over time, it creates Grand Canyon. Your daily practices are like those drops of water, gradually reshaping the landscape of your consciousness. Every morning when you wake up, you have a choice. You can start your day by checking if they've texted you, by analyzing their behavior from yesterday, by planning how to get their attention. Or you can begin by connecting with the love that already exists within you, setting an intention to show up as your highest self, regardless of what anyone else does. Those who radiate irresistible presence have learned to start each day by filling themselves up first. They spend 15 minutes in quiet contemplation, not thinking about their problems or relationships, but connecting with the eternal part of themselves that needs nothing from anyone. They appreciate their own company. They feel gratitude for their own life. They set intentions based on their values rather than their desires. This practice transforms everything. When you begin each day connected to your own wholeness, you stop looking to others to validate your worth. When you feel grateful for your own existence, you stop needing others to prove they appreciate you. When you're clear about your values, you stop compromising them to keep someone interested. Consider Maria, who had been in an on and off relationship for 3 years. Every morning she would wake up and immediately check her phone to see if he had contacted her. If her day started well. If he hadn't, she would spend hours crafting the perfect message to get his attention. Her entire emotional state depended on his responsiveness. Then she decided to reclaim her mornings. She started waking up 30 minutes earlier and spending that time in silence, reflecting on what she was grateful for in her own life. She would set an intention to show up with love and authenticity, whether or not she heard from him. She began treating herself with the tenderness she had been seeking from him. Within 2 months, everything changed, not because she was using a technique to manipulate him, but because she had genuinely shifted her energy from neediness to wholeness. He began initiating contact more frequently. He started making concrete plans instead of keeping things vague. He began treating her with the respect she was now showing herself. The evening practice is equally important. Before sleep, instead of replaying conversations or planning tomorrow's strategies to win someone's love, you reflect on how you showed up that day. You appreciate yourself for the moments when you chose love over fear, authenticity over performance, truth over comfort. You acknowledge where you grew, where you struggled, and where you can improve tomorrow. This nightly review creates what I call the compound effect of self-respect. Each day that you choose to honor yourself, to speak your truth, to maintain your boundaries, you make deposits in the bank account of your own worth. Over time, these deposits accumulate into an unshakable sense of value that no one can diminish. Between morning and evening, your life becomes a practice of conscious cultivation. You begin to notice how you speak to yourself throughout the day. Do you criticize and judge, or do you encourage and support? You observe how you treat your body. Do you nourish it with good food and movement, or do you punish it with neglect and substances? You pay attention to how you spend your time. Do you invest it in activities that feed your soul, or do you waste it on distractions that leave you empty? Physical vitality plays a crucial role in magnetic presence, not because you need to look perfect to attract love, but because how you treat your body reflects how you value yourself. When you move your body regularly, you're telling yourself that you matter enough to invest in your health. When you eat foods that nourish rather than foods that numb, you're practicing self-respect. When you get adequate sleep instead of staying up worrying about relationships, you're choosing self-care over self-destruction. These practices might seem unrelated to attracting commitment, but they're actually the foundation of it. Someone who takes excellent care of themselves signals to others that they're worthy of excellent care. Someone who respects their own body, time, and energy attracts others who will also respect these things. Creative expression becomes another powerful tool for cultivation. When you engage in activities that bring you joy, whether it's painting, writing, dancing, or gardening, you connect with the part of yourself that exists independent of any relationship. You remember that you are a complete, fascinating person with interests and passions that have nothing to do with romantic love. This creative engagement serves two purposes. First, it fills you with life force and enthusiasm that others find naturally attractive. Second, it gives you something to talk about besides your relationship concerns. When you have a rich inner life, conversations become more interesting. When you are passionate about your own pursuits, you're less likely to make someone else the center of your universe. Service to others provides perhaps the most powerful transformation of all. When you regularly contribute to something greater than yourself, whether through volunteering, mentoring, or simply being genuinely helpful to those around you, you shift from a consciousness of lack to a consciousness of abundance. You remember that you have gifts to offer the world. You experience the joy of giving rather than constantly seeking to receive. This shift from receiving to giving changes your entire energetic nature. Instead of approaching relationships with the question, "What can you do for me?" you begin asking, "What can I contribute?" Instead of looking for someone to make you happy, you become someone who creates happiness wherever you go. But here's the crucial part. These practices only work when you do them for yourself, not as strategies to attract someone. The moment you start meditating to get someone to commit, you've missed the point entirely. The moment you begin exercising to make someone jealous, you're back in manipulation mode. The moment you volunteer to prove you're a good person, worthy of love, you've returned to seeking external validation. The transformation happens when you genuinely fall in love with the process of becoming your best self. When you meditate because it brings you peace. When you exercise because it makes you feel strong and alive. When you create because it expresses your soul. When you serve because it connects you to your purpose. This is when others begin to notice something different about you. There's a quality of presence that wasn't there before. A sense of centeredness that doesn't depend on their approval. A joy that comes from within rather than from external circumstances. A confidence that's rooted in self-knowledge rather than in others' opinions of you. The predictable patterns of life begin working in your favor instead of against you. You start to understand that relationships, like seasons, have natural cycles. There are times of closeness and times of space, times of growth and times of rest, times of expansion and times of contraction. Instead of fighting these rhythms, you learn to flow with them. When someone needs space, instead of panicking, you use that time to deepen your own practices. When they're distant, instead of pursuing, you focus on your own interests and friendship. When they're uncertain about commitment, instead of pressuring, you continue building a life so fulfilling that their decision doesn't determine your happiness. This flowing with natural rhythms requires what I call emotional mastery. You learn to feel your feelings fully without being controlled by them. When fear arises, you acknowledge it but don't let it drive your behavior. When insecurity surfaces, you comfort yourself instead of seeking comfort from others. When anger appears, You express it appropriately rather than suppressing it or exploding. Emotional mastery means understanding that your feelings are information, not instructions. Fear might tell you that someone is losing interest, but that doesn't mean you should chase them. Insecurity might whisper that you're not good enough, but that doesn't mean you should change yourself to please others. Anger might signal that a boundary has been crossed, but that doesn't mean you should attack or withdraw. As you develop this mastery, you become incredibly attractive to those who are emotionally healthy themselves. Stable people are drawn to other stable people. Secure people want partners who can handle their own emotions. Mature individuals seek relationships with those who take responsibility for their inner experience. The compound effect of all these practices creates what can only be described as irresistible presence. Not because you're trying to be irresistible, but because you've become genuinely comfortable in your own skin. Not because you're performing attractiveness, but because you've fallen in love with your own life. Not because you're seeking approval, but because you've learned to approve of yourself. This presence has a quality that hungry, seeking energy lacks. It's peaceful without being passive. It's confident without being arrogant. It's open without being desperate. It's loving without being possessive. It draws people in, not through manipulation, but through the simple magnetism of someone who has found their center and refuses to abandon it for anyone. When you embody this presence consistently, you no longer attract avoidant people because avoidant people feel unsafe around such groundedness. They're comfortable with chaos, with drama, with the push and pull of unhealthy dynamics. They don't know what to do with someone who is simply peacefully, unshakably themselves. Instead, you begin attracting people who are ready for real partnership. People who have done their own work. People who can appreciate depth without running from it. People who want to grow together rather than stay stuck in familiar patterns of dysfunction. The key to sustaining this transformation is remembering that it's not about them. It's not about getting anyone to commit. It's about falling so in love with the process of becoming your highest self that the outcome of any particular relationship becomes secondary to the joy of your own evolution. The most dangerous moment in your transformation is when you start to feel good about yourself again. Who here has ever made progress in their personal growth, felt confident and centered, then completely sabotaged it the moment someone showed interest in you? Raise your hands high, keep them up. This is the moment where most people lose everything they've worked so hard to build. This is where the real mastery begins. You see, your old patterns have been with you for years, maybe decades. They know exactly when you're vulnerable. They know precisely how to whisper in your ear when someone attractive enters your life. They know how to convince you that this time is different, that this person is special, that you can abandon all your boundaries and practices just this once. We teach people how to treat us by what we tolerate from ourselves. Every time you abandon your morning practice because they want to see you early, you teach them that your needs are negotiable. Every time you cancel plans with friends because they're suddenly available, you teach them that your commitments to others don't matter. Every time you ignore your intuition because you want to keep them happy, you teach them that your inner wisdom is worthless. The patterns that sabotage love are so subtle, so familiar, that most people don't recognize them until the damage is done. You meet someone who seems different, who appears ready for real commitment, and suddenly you're back to checking your phone obsessively. You're overanalyzing every conversation. You're abandoning the very practices that made you attractive in the first place. Sarah, the woman I mentioned earlier, almost fell into this trap. 2 weeks after Mark proposed, she found herself slipping back into old habits. She started seeking constant reassurance. She began monitoring his moods and taking responsibility for his emotions. She was unconsciously trying to recreate the familiar dynamic of pursuit and avoidance, even though she now had the commitment she thought she wanted. Fortunately, she caught herself. She recognized that getting the commitment was only the beginning. Maintaining the consciousness that attracted it was the real work. She realized that her old patterns weren't just about attracting love. They were about feeling safe in familiar dysfunction. The most common self-sabotage pattern is what I call anxious communication. The moment you feel uncertain about where you stand, You start texting more frequently. You ask questions designed to fish for reassurance. You over-explain your feeling. You apologize for things that don't require apology. You begin performing the role of the perfect partner instead of simply being yourself. This anxious communication always backfires because it comes from the energy of insecurity rather than love. No matter how loving your words, if they're motivated by fear, they create this. No matter how thoughtful your gestures, if they're driven by the need for validation, they push people away. Another destructive pattern is abandoning your life for the relationship. You stop seeing friends regularly. You give up hobbies and interests that used to bring you joy. You make yourself constantly available. You begin to orbit around their schedule, their needs, their preferences. You lose the very qualities that made you attractive in the first place. This happens because you unconsciously believe that love requires sacrifice. You think that proving your devotion means giving up your independence. You confuse love with merger. But healthy relationships thrive on two whole people maintaining their individual identities while choosing to share their lives together. The third pattern is over-functioning and rescue. You start trying to solve their problems. You offer advice they haven't asked for. You take on their responsibilities. You make their emotions your responsibility. You begin managing their life instead of living your own. Seems loving, but it's actually controlling. It's based on the unconscious belief that they need you to fix them, which implies they're broken. People don't commit to those who treat them as broken. They commit to those who see their wholeness and potential. They are attracted to partners, not parents. They want someone who believes in their capability, not someone who rescues them from their own life. Emotional drama and intensity represent another common sabotage pattern. You create crises to feel important. You pick fights to test their commitment. You manufacture emergencies to get their attention. You confuse intensity with intimacy, chaos with passion. You unconsciously recreate the familiar patterns of your childhood, even when they're painful. But the most subtle and destructive pattern is losing your sense of self. You start agreeing with opinions you don't share. You laugh at jokes you don't find funny. You enjoy activities that bore you. You mold yourself into what you think they want instead of being who you actually are. You become a performance of a person rather than an authentic human being. This shape-shifting might work temporarily, but it always fails eventually. You can't maintain a false self indefinitely. Eventually, your true nature emerges and they feel deceived. Or worse, they fall in love with your performance, which means they never really knew you at all. The framework for eliminating these patterns is surprisingly simple. It requires what I call the stop technique. When you feel the urge to act from fear, anxiety, or the need for control, you stop whatever you're about to do. You take a conscious breath to center yourself. You observe what you're really feeling underneath the impulse. Then you proceed from consciousness rather than reaction. This technique interrupts the automatic patterns that have been running your relationships for years. Instead of immediately texting when you feel insecure, you stop and breathe. Instead of automatically agreeing when you actually disagree, you pause and observe your truth. Instead of rushing to fix their problems, you step back and let them handle their own life. The practice requires developing what I call the witness consciousness. Part of you learns to observe your thoughts and emotions without being controlled by them. You notice when fear arises without letting it drive your behavior. You acknowledge insecurity without acting from it. You feel the impulse to control without following it. This consciousness takes time to develop. At first, you might catch yourself after you've already acted from the old pattern. That's progress. Recognition is the first step. Then you begin catching yourself in the middle of the pattern. Eventually, you recognize the impulse before you act on it. Finally, the impulse itself becomes less frequent because you're no longer feeding it with your attention and energy. Creating new neural pathways requires consistency and repetition. For 21 days, commit to catching yourself every time you're about to act from fear instead of love. Notice when you're about to seek reassurance and choose to reassure yourself instead. Observe when you're about to abandon your plans for someone else and honor your commitments to yourself. This isn't about becoming rigid or unavailable. It's about maintaining your center while remaining open to genuine connection. It's about responding rather than reacting. It's about making conscious choices rather than unconscious compromise. The daily disciplines that create extraordinary results are both simple and profound. Each morning, before you check any messages or engage with anyone else, spend 15 minutes connecting with your own heart. Ask yourself what you need today to feel fulfilled, regardless of what anyone else does. Set an intention to show up authentically, to honor your truth, to love without grasping. Throughout the day, practice speaking your truth without demanding that others agree with it. Express your needs as invitations rather than requirements. Say what you mean without making others responsible for your feelings. Listen to understand rather than to fix or change. Give others the space to be themselves while maintaining the space to be yourself. Your communication becomes a practice of conscious relating. When someone shares a problem, instead of immediately offering solutions, you ask if they want advice or simply someone to listen. When you disagree with something, instead of arguing or silently resenting, you express your perspective calmly and allow them to have theirs. When you feel triggered, instead of reacting immediately, you take time to understand what's really happening inside you. Evening practices anchor the transformation. Before sleep, review your day not from the perspective of what others did or didn't do, but from the awareness of how you showed up. Appreciate yourself for the moments when you chose consciousness over reactivity. Acknowledge where you slipped into old patterns without judging yourself harshly. Set intentions for tomorrow based on growth rather than fear. Weekly practices maintain your independent life and purpose. Spend time with friends who knew you before this relation. Engage in activities that feed your soul regardless of whether your partner joins you. Pursue goals and dreams that belong to you alone. Maintain the interests and passions that make you interesting. Monthly practices involve honest evaluation of your relationship pattern. Are you growing together or enabling each other's limitations? Are you inspiring each other toward your highest potential or settling into comfortable mediocrity? Are you both becoming better people through your connection or using the relationship to avoid personal growth? These practices create what I call the magnetism of authentic living. When you love your life, whether you're in a relationship or not, you become irresistible to those who are ready for real partnership. When you're committed to your own growth and evolution, you attract others who share that commitment. When you refuse to abandon yourself for anyone, you draw in people who will never ask you to. The most powerful truth about conscious commitment is this: people commit to those who are already committed to themselves. They choose to build a life with someone who has already built a beautiful life alone. They want to add to someone's happiness, not become responsible for creating it. This requires releasing the fantasy that love means never being alone. Healthy love means being so comfortable with your own company that you share it generously, rather than desperate. It means being so fulfilled by your own existence that you invite others to participate in your joy rather than demanding that they provide it. When you embody this consciousness consistently, something miraculous happens. You stop attracting people who need fixing because you're no longer trying to fix anyone. You stop attracting avoidant people because you're no longer chasing anyone. You stop attracting uncommitted people because you're no longer willing to accept uncertainty as love. Instead, you begin attracting people who are as committed to growth as you are. People who respect boundaries because they have healthy boundaries themselves. People who communicate directly because they value truth over comfort. People who want partnership because they understand the difference between need and choice. Starting today, you can implement 3 practices that will transform your relationship patterns immediately. First, define your non-negotiables and live by them consistently. These are the values, boundaries, and standards that you will not compromise regardless of how much you care about someone. Write them down. Commit to them, honor them even when it's uncomfortable. Second, begin the daily practice of self-appreciation. Each evening, write down 3 things you appreciated about how you showed up that day. Not what others did for you, but what you did for yourself and others. Not external achievements, but internal growth. This practice rewires your brain to recognize your own worth independent of others' validation. Third, create space in your life for your own dreams and purposes. Identify something that matters to you beyond any relationship. Pursue it with the same passion you've been putting into seeking love. Become so engaged with your own life purpose that your happiness doesn't depend on anyone else's participation. The person who wins at love is the one who first wins at being themselves. The person who attracts deep commitment is the one who has committed deeply to their own evolution. The person who never has to chase love is the one who has learned to love themselves so completely that others are naturally drawn to that radiance. Your transformation begins now, not when they change. Your happiness starts today, not when they commit. Your love becomes real the moment you stop seeking it outside yourself and start cultivating it within. This is not just the path to attracting commitment. This is the path to becoming someone worthy of the love you've always desired.